Hey Laguna Roadrunners, Mr. T here. It is Asian American Pacific Islander Awareness Month. I am super excited to be here to share with you a taste or a part of culture from a different country in Asia. Mr. T's parents were raised in Cambodia, and this is the book that I get to read with you all. It's called A Song for Cambodia. Alright, let's start. Alright. So it starts. In a country of sugar palms, whispering grasses, and bright sunshine, there lived a boy named Arn. His home was filled with the sweet sound of music and laughter. He danced with his 11 brothers and sisters while his grandparents sang songs of long ago. His mother hummed to the little ones while she worked. His father taught the older children operas in the evening. In Arn's village in the northern Cambodia, fresh fruits and vegetables filled the open-air markets. Arn and other boys of 8 and 9 plucked silver fish by the dozens from flowing rivers. Water buffaloes grazed in the countryside, long-legged cranes danced on the shore, and flower gardens grew alongside the homes. Arn's families took offerings of food to the orange-robed Buddhist monks. Sounds of gongs mixed with the songs of birds and the laughter of children. During the hottest months of 1975, the sun dimmed in the smoky sky. Explosions cracked through the air like 1,000 New Year noisemakers. The ground shook. A group of soldiers called the Khmer Rouge, or the Red Khmers, spread through the land like an army of ants, stripping everything in their path. Hospitals were emptied, temples crushed, schools were made into prisons, and books burned in fires. Songbirds stopped chirping and monks were silenced. Art, religion, music disappeared from people's lives. Some areas near Cambodia were used to the sound of war. While Cambodia remained neutral, the war between the United States and Cambodians' neighbors, Vietnam, had often spilled across the borders. Arn lived far from this fighting and far from the American planes that bombed the countryside. So when Arn and his family heard unfamiliar explosions, they were afraid. Steadily, the sounds of fighting grew closer until the day came when the Khmer Rouge reached Arn's village. Soldiers with hard faces pointed rifles. They ordered families out of their homes and herded them into groups. When soldiers arrived at Arn's home, his heart beat faster and louder than any drum. The soldiers separated Arn and his families to go to different work camps. There was nothing they could do. In the last moments, they shouted tearful goodbyes. Arn clutched his mother's, but the soldiers forced them apart. She cried out for her children, then was gone. Arn would never hear her voice again. Okay. After a long, hard journey, Arn stumbled into a children's work camp. Empty-handed and broken-hearted, around him, Arn saw children of all ages. They were each given sets of dark clothes, but no shoes. Arn worked in the rice paddies from sunrise to midnight. He labored under the blazing sun and in the monsoon rains. His bare feet blistered, his belly bulged, even though it was always empty. Rice had become more prized than gemstones, which meant little of it was wasted on the young workers. If they were lucky, the children caught dragonflies, beetles, and grubs to eat. Sweet sounds no longer filled Arn's world. He and the other children worked for hours in silence because talking was forbidden. All that broke the quiet were the shouts of soldiers threatening young workers and the rumbles of Arn's empty belly. Arn yearned for his home, full of joyful music and the comfort of his mother's hum. The silence became deafening in time. It seemed as if even the soldiers would not live without music. One day, they asked for volunteers to join a musical group. The group would play revolutionary and marching songs. Bravely, Arn raised his hand, a shaky hand. He and 5 others were chosen to learn to play the kilm, a wooden string instrument. Arn's father has told his sons that Cambodian music existed in memory. Songs were passed down from a parent to a children or from a master to a student. There was no written compositions. A man with white hair and sad eyes became Arn's teacher. The master taught his students to play different notes by striking the strings on the kiln with the bamboo mallets. Soon, a stream of notes blended into a song. Arn knew he must play his best, for his life depended on pleasing the soldiers. In only 5 days, Arn became the best student. Soon after, Arn and the soldiers learned to play. A soldier gathered the teacher, but all but the best 2 kiln players. The group marched into the sweet-smell orange groves, and the soldiers returned alone. Arn mourned the death of his teacher, whose name he never knew, but he held his pain deep inside. Arn could be killed if he was caught crying. The gentle sounds of the kiln was heaven to Arn. When he practiced, he thought of the world far from the pain and suffering of the work camp. Songs filled Arn's empty stomach and soothed his broken heart. Hidden feelings flowed through him as the mallet struck various tones on the kiln. Arn tapped out his songs while other children worked. He saw them tilt their heads to catch the tunes in the muggy air. A few closed their eyes as they twist rice seedlings into the muddy grounds. The music took them as far from the rice fields too. Arn endured life in the camps for 4 long years. When he was about 12 years old, South Vietnam invaded Cambodia. The Khmer Rouge soldiers didn't want to fight the Vietnamese. Instead, they sent Arn and the other boys to fight at the borders. Rocks and cinders rained from the sky. Terrified, Arn escaped into the maze of jungles. He took shelter there. During the day, Arn followed droppings. During the day, Arn followed the chatter sounds of monkey families. He picked up the food that they dropped, knowing that it would be safe to eat. He drank from the streams and rain puddles. At night, he chased the animals from the treetops nest and curled up to sleep in the sounds of nature. Arn kept running and trying to get as far away as he could from the fighting and explosions. After 3 months, he crumpled to the ground with a raging fever. He didn't know the distance he had traveled and that he was now near the country of Thailand. Arn awoke in the Sako refugee camp. 2 girls had found him at the border of Cambodia and Thailand and helped bring him to the camp. Workers there nursed Arn until his fever broke. In a refugee camp, Arn was free from the Khmer Rouge soldiers and the fighting, but life was very hard there too. Food was scarce, days were long, and the aid workers left each night. The orphans in the camp feared that they would be sold back to the Khmer Rouge by Thai soldiers who guarded the camp after dark. Afraid and alone, Arn longed for the comforting music of his kiln. One day, a flood swept through the camp, and Arn was too weak to help himself. He would have drowned if a tall man had not plucked him from the murky floodwaters. Arn became friends with the American volunteer who saved him, Reverend Peter Pond. Arn and Reverend Peter did not speak to each other's language. They communicated with hand signals and smiles. Day by day, the relationship grew stronger, and Arn began to feel less lonely. Before returning to the United States, Reverend Peter decided to adopt Arn. Okay. Arn arrived in the United States when he was 14 years old. Stepping off the plane, Arn ran and tried to hide. The bright lights of the airport reminded him of flashing gunfires without sound. There were many things for Arn to get used to in his new country. He slept on a mattress and went to school in a large building for the first time. Ketchup became his favorite food. Arn was safe and had enough to eat. His body grew stronger, but inside his heart still ached with the loss of his family in Cambodia. He had nightmares, and they frightened him. Since Arn did not speak much English, he could not express how he felt. Arn asked Reverend Peter to find him a kiln and a Cambodian flute, a kahoy. Soon, single notes became melodies, and Arn made music again. In time, he began to play for other people and learned to talk to them about his life in Cambodia. Through playing his music and telling his story, Arn slowly began to heal on the inside too. Over the years, Arn's nightmare transformed into a dream of helping his homeland. With his heart once again full of sweet sounds, Arn vowed to return to his country of sugar plums, whispering grasses, bright sunshines, and helping others with his music. Alright. The end, boys and girls. I hope that story was nice for you, boys and girls. Once again, just want to share. These are things that did happen. My parents have experienced similar things, not quite the same. They immigrated to the United States, and they started their own business with the help of other family members in the States. And I'm very fortunate to hear the story. I hope you boys and girls are fortunate as well. Thank you for listening. All right. Bye, Roadrunners. Beep, beep.